Hey, today's Martin Luther King Day. Pretty good day. Guy was a pretty great guy. He did a lot of good things, and he's got some incredible quotes out there and speeches that don't just touch and reach black people, it also should touch and reach a lot of white people. He was an incredibly smart man, and he just understood the importance of justice, and he understood a lot of things more than anybody like me would understand, probably. But it's a good day to memorialize the important things in your life. It makes me remember my grandpa. I was blessed to have him in my life until I was about 14, 15 years old. He was a West Virginia sportsman, big hunter and fisher, outdoorsman. He was a very interesting guy. He was gentlemanly, worked for the gas company his whole life. He was a classy guy. And when I say classy, I mean like West Virginia classy, which would not come off as classy in a nightclub in New York or a dinner party in LA. But he was well and above classier than any of those people that would be at those parties. He was a gentleman. He was a sportsman. He understood conservation. He understood the importance of just a lot of things. So this was his axe. And the funny thing, and I say axe, hatchet. The funny thing is this isn't a special hatchet. You know, it's not Fisker's Gerber. It's not. I think it's an Ace Hardware hatchet. But this hatchet is old. I mean, he died in 84. He had this well before that. Here's his name. He wrote his name inside the sheath. Tom Hawkins. So, back before 1984, my grandpa was using this for whatever reason. Had it probably in his satchel or in his bag out when he's hunting. It's a Stanley. But I have it. And every time I look at it, it reminds me of him. Now, it leads me to a story. Back in the day, I used to go on a fishing trip in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, with a bunch of friends of mine. And it was a great trip. Great weekend, a long weekend we would do. And we would float the Potomac or the Paw Paw River on 8-foot John boats with just a trolling motor to kind of get us from left to right, you know, from shore to shore, and keep from hitting big rocks or anything. But for the most part, we parked our trucks up north of the river, and we knew how far we could float in 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, and where to park our pickup vehicle downriver. So we would do this 3 days in a row, catching fish. First day is catch and release. Second day, catch and release. And then the third day, catch and keep, tournament style, heaviest weight, wins some prizes and stuff like that. But that would be the day we would then bring home the fish we caught, tally up who won the tournament, and then fillet it all and fry it and cook them in pans with butter, and it was awesome. We're eating bass and anything else we caught, but bass typically straight from the river, Potomac River. And man, that was some good times. But I made the fatal error in my kit, I don't know what to call it. It was like a canvas bag that had all my fishing gear in it. I decided thought it would be smart because I always just wanted it with me, was my grandpa's pocket knife. And it was in there. And it was this big pocket knife. And I can't remember if it was like an old Henry, if it was a buck, if it was whatever, but it had this pewter inlay of a bear running. And it was a knife that I remembered looking at in my grandpa's workshop back when he was alive and I was just a little kid. I would go through his drawers in his workshop and just come across, all these knives, and I'd be looking at them like, wow, man, I hope someday my grandpa will give me one of those. And he didn't give it to me. My grandma gave it to me because he had died before he could give it to me. I would have been too young to have such a knife. But now I'm on this fishing trip and it's in my bag. And we hit some rapids. Nothing like, not Colorado rapids. And it wasn't like in a movie where, I'm scrambling and whatever. But they were rapids enough for an 8-foot John boat with a flat bottom to flip it. So me and my buddy, boats flipped, all of our gear, bottom of the river. And we're standing on the side of the river and I'm kind of distraught. And my buddy looks at me, and it was Nick Valero. And he looked at me and he goes, "What's the matter?" And I said, "My grandpa's knife was in my bag." He goes, "Are you kidding me?" I go, "No, I'm not kidding you." He knew right away. He was a man of quality, is a man of quality. He's a, 82nd Airborne veteran. We went to high school together. He's a badass. He's a great dude. I don't stay in touch with him. I wish I did. But he looked at me and he knew that he had to say something to me because I was mentally on a cliff at that moment. Which probably didn't mean much because I'm not a volatile person in that sense. But, he knew I was vulnerable and he knew that I needed to hear the right thing to make this okay. And he said, "Rich, your grandpa was a West Virginia sportsman. And there's no better way to put to rest a piece of his equipment than it being you, his grandson, on a fishing trip in West Virginia, and that hunting knife being at the bottom of the Potomac in West Virginia on a fishing trip where you were out living your life outdoors with the wildlife and with the running river and its currents that on that day took my grandpa's knife away from me." That was the only thing that he could have ever said that would have been okay in that moment. That's how emotional I was. I looked at him and I knew that Nick was a man of quality and he understood me and he understood my love for my grandpa, and he made it okay. And I've never beat myself up over being stupid enough to have such an important piece of memorabilia in my fishing bag. Now it makes me understand better. Understand you got to be careful with that stuff. But also understand that life's going to give you an explanation. An explanation to why things happen certain ways. So, in memory of my grandpa and some good friends in that little story, Martin Luther King, my mother, my grandma, old Betty Hawkins, who gave me all this stuff after my grandpa died. It's important to remember. It's a hatchet.